but it also affects everyone a little bit differently. So what I'm saying today may not be the experience that you've had, but it may be the experience someone else has had. So throughout the presentation, if you have questions or if you have something that you would like to share, please feel free to do so. So I'm just going to start with a few basic facts. Does anyone know how many Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease? Or have any guesses? A lot, yeah. 5.7 million Americans live with Alzheimer's disease. So more than likely, it affects someone that you know, you've lost someone to the disease. It affects a lot of people. They're projecting that 14 million people will be diagnosed with the disease by 2050. Along with being diagnosed with the disease, I know many of you know caregivers or perhaps are a caregiver for someone dealing with this disease. And on top of the number of people diagnosed, there are 16.1 million caregivers who are providing unpaid and paid care to those living with the disease. So this disease not only affects the person who's diagnosed, it certainly affects those who are caring for them, their family members, everyone. So you may hear the two terms, Alzheimer's and dementia, used interchangeably. Does anyone know what the difference is? Laura?
Alzheimer's is just one of the 7 main kinds.
Yep. Yeah, so dementia is the umbrella. Underneath dementia, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So some form of dementia may be part of normal aging, however, Alzheimer's disease is not. You may hear many people joke that, oh, the Alzheimer's is kicking in if they forget something. That's not part of Alzheimer's disease. It may be part of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have it. So Alzheimer's disease is progressive and it's fatal. It affects everything in your body, so you're not able to do your activities of daily living any longer. So you may not know how to brush your teeth anymore, or how to get dressed, or how to go to the bathroom. So there are many different ways that we work with people to make sure that they know how to do those things, especially the caregivers. Next, I'll talk a little bit about the steps to do when you know someone who has it. So there is currently no way to cure, to treat, or stop the symptoms of the disease. Partially because it's very expensive to do research. They haven't been able to find a drug that can do that yet. And also because everyone is affected differently. So the main part of Alzheimer's disease, it causes plaques and tangles in your brain. So those are little protein buildups that affect the way that the little synapses in your brain fire off and communicate with one another. So if these plaques and tangles are growing, there's no way for the communication from one side of your brain to get to the other. There's also this barrier around your brain that makes it very difficult for things to get in and your brain doesn't want it to be attacked. So medicine is really difficult to get to those parts of the brain that are not working. So those are the main reasons why there's not any way to prevent or cure or slow the disease, because there's not really an effective way for the medication to get to your brain. Last week, they just had a big research conference in Chicago, and some researchers are now studying a way that you can, through using machines, open up a barrier in the brain to shoot medicine in quickly. So hopefully, in the next 10 to 20 years, we'll have a way to effectively get medicine into the brain, but at this point, we don't. So the ways that you can prevent Alzheimer's, or ways that you can prevent your risk of getting Alzheimer's, is just to stay active, stay healthy. More and more people are getting diagnosed at an early age. So early diagnosis is key. It also means that we're able to see how people are living with it and different ways to help treat it. That's a pretty brief overview. Are there any questions on any specifics about the disease, how it may affect someone, or a personal story you'd like to share?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How is it diagnosed? Is it like a blood test, or is it just sort of a, subjective trying to figure out?
It's a lot of subjective tests, but there are different ways. So there's a lot of steps. It takes a long time to be diagnosed. So they may do mini mental tests, cognitive tests. They'll interview you and your family to see how you're reacting to things. And they'll do that, and then a year later they'll do it again to see where your benchmarks are and if you've plateaued, is this where you're at? And then they'll go and they can do even further tests. They can do scans, they can look at the brain. It used to be a myth that Alzheimer's could only be diagnosed, well, it wasn't a myth, it was true at the time that it could only be diagnosed in an autopsy. Now there are different scans that they can do to see where the plaques and tangles are in the brain. Yeah.
That medicine they give to supposedly slow it down a little bit. Is that really, does it actually help?
So there are 3 different medications that people primarily use. There's one called Aricept, Namenda, and then Memetine, I think is how you say it correctly, but they all work in different parts of the brain. So since everyone's Alzheimer's is a little bit different, it works for some people and most of the time is not very effective. It may help slow the progression very slightly, but maybe for a short period of time. But they do use those. A lot of times they use them together to help keep you as active and doing your activities of daily living as normal as possible.
So you said fatal. What kills you then of Alzheimer's?
Ultimately, it kills you because you have no communication to your brain. So your brain's not communicating to your heart, to any of the rest of the organs of your body. Your system's shut down.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what Vernon had?
No, this was different.
Yeah.
My husband had Lewy body.
Lewy body, yeah, and that's a different.
That wasn't fun, but it worked kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Lewy bodies tends to work a little bit faster. It progresses faster.
yeah, some of the people in his nursing home had Alzheimer's, and so you kind of watched the slow
Progression.
downward, and it was slow
Yeah.
in many cases.
Yeah, people can live after diagnosis of Alzheimer's. A typical lifespan is 4 to 8 years. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it can be, the longest I think is up to 20 years.
It was one lady who paced the hall, paced the hall, paced the hall, paced the hall. Then she couldn't pace the hall anymore, and before Vernon was gone, she was just kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sad to watch.
Yeah, it takes away those daily things that you do. Sometimes people revert back in age, so they may play with baby dolls or cars, or if you've ever been to a memory care unit, they oftentimes have life stations around the memory care unit. So you may see someone playing dress up or walking around pushing her baby, who she thinks is her own daughter or son, in a stroller, or playing with the cars, building with blocks. So it affects every part of you until the end.
This is a friend of ours, not my story, but a friend of ours whose mother was prim and proper, that era. As she got worse, she'd go around
Mm-hmm.
mooning. I mean,
Oh,
she'd
yeah.
pull her dress up and.
That happens more often than not. Or you'll hear of, there's one lady that we work with, her sister is a nun, and when she started being diagnosed and progressing, she swore like no other. I mean, you would not have expected it from her. But she just, you have your filters and you no longer,
Yes.
Yeah.
you have no way of filtering what you're saying or
We had
thinking.
one guy who, yes, used all kinds of inappropriate language
Yeah.
at full volume.
Oh yeah,
A lot.
a lot. Yeah. And it's good to laugh about it, because a lot of times the caregivers, the only thing you have is humor.
Yes.
Humor left.
Is it somewhat normal for them to get mean too?
It depends. So with normal Alzheimer's, it's not really. So vascular dementia has a way of affecting your brain, so you are a lot more aggressive. It does not happen to everyone, but it can happen. You can become aggressive or very paranoid about what's going on, or maybe your caregiver who's been caring for you is all of a sudden stealing from you or hurting you. Different things like that happen.
Sure.
But yeah.
My dad had a dementia, it wasn't Alzheimer's, but he got sweet. He he was so mellow, it was
Yeah.
just, we almost wished he'd have had that earlier.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Not really, because,
Because you lose the person.
well,
Yeah.
yes, and he wandered a
Mhm.
lot,
Yeah.
which was very scary.
Yeah. Wally?
What's the earliest age that this can occur?
People have been diagnosed in their 30s and 40s. Typically, they're seeing more and more by age 65. So I think about 200,000 of those living with it are diagnosed at age around 65. Yeah, Diane.
Is the trait for it heredity?
So there are many different risk factors. Having it in your family history is a risk, but actually the most common risk factor is age. So you could have it on both sides of your family, and if you live a healthy lifestyle, they've seen where you haven't been diagnosed. Or you can live as healthy of a lifestyle as the other person and be diagnosed. So it is a risk factor, but the most common risk factor is age.
Do Parkinson's and
Dementia.
dementia go together?
They do.
Somewhat?
Yeah, so there's a form of dementia that occurs when someone has Parkinson's. Yep, Don?
My brother-in-law, we was going up to Grand Junction, Colorado, and we went on a train. And he talked about it, and we talked about it, it was going to be so great, and we got in, we was probably, I don't know, 100 miles from Glenwood Springs, and stayed all night and everything, and he got us the next day. And he was gonna get off that train, no matter what. So we went and got the conductor, and, because I tried to talk to him, and he cooked his fist up, and he said, "Don't you come near me." He was gonna kick the side of that train out and get out of there, because he knew he was gonna crash. And this guy, his wife would do nothing. He sat down beside this guy, and he got him calmed down. And they stopped the train at Glenwood Springs, and when we stopped, there was a fire truck there, police, ambulance, and he got off of that train, and he was another guy. So they took him to the hospital, and the only thing they found out, pretty much, other than he had this, was his blood pressure was elevated. So they took us, well, her niece come and got us, and, I mean, he, and afterwards I said to this guy, the conductor, I said, "Boy, you handled that well." I said, and he said, "Well, I tell you what, I've traveled this train for 38 years, he said, "I've seen everything." And so we did not mention coming home on a train.
Yeah.
We ended up renting a car, and the women drove home, but he was out of it. I mean, he was,
Right, and you never know how they're gonna react. So usually it's best we call it therapeutic lies, or Laura may have a different term from working with the
You just enter
population.
their world, whatever
Yep.
you roll with it. They think you're their daughter, you just roll with it.
You do, yeah. It's so much easier than trying to
And
To
it doesn't
argue or
sense
find
them.
a way.
If you argue with them or try to orient them, don't, just go with it.
Does sleep have anything to do with their sleeping habits?
of being diagnosed.
No, that, it seemed to be when my uncle, the dad was talking about, if he got really, really, really tired and not getting his sleep, it would kick it up better.
Sure, I mean,
Kick it up
when we
more.
get tired, it's hard for us
Yeah.
to focus and react the way we normally do, yeah. And a lot of times too, if someone has a urinary tract infection or something is going on in their body, that's gonna cause them to react a different way. There are situations when if you take them from their normal routines, they're gonna wander, they're not gonna wanna be there. So keeping someone in there as a close a routine that they're used to as possible is beneficial as well. Anything else?
I was gonna ask in what capacity you are working with Alzheimer's.
So previously I worked, I was a director of an assisted living, so I worked with them every day. Now I do more of the consulting with the families and provide support groups. So I facilitate 2 support groups where we work with caregivers and those who are diagnosed and living with the disease. And then I do a lot of outreach and development as well, because raising awareness and raising funds is how we can keep doing research trials. So right now they're focusing on a pointer study which is a study that was done in Finland. They brought it to the US with the same background, but it's focusing on sleep habits, eating habits, physical activity, education level, to see how those affect people as they progress. So they're starting this research at childbirth to see if you live this lifestyle, will this affect it? Because it's difficult, pharmaceutical companies don't necessarily want to jump on because they won't get anything from it. But also, how can you change a whole society's lifestyle too? So it takes time and money, and so that's another part of my job as well.
Support groups are very important.
They are. Yeah, if you have a friend or family member, someone who is not attending a support group and you think it might be beneficial, please let me know. I can get you a list of the ones that we have in the area. We have them continuously ongoing. We also have educational programs that we do throughout the area as well.
Is it more prevalent in certain cultures than
It
others?
is, yeah, so it's more prevalent in women than men, and it's actually 1.5 times more prevalent in Latinos and 2 times more prevalent in African Americans.
Really?
Yeah, so they don't have an exact reason why, they just think it's maybe because the vascular genes of those races are a little bit different. Yeah. Great.
Can you talk about what's going on in September?
Yeah, sure. So in September, we have a walk to end Alzheimer's, and we invite all of you to come join us. It's on September 15th at the Tax Slayer Center. It's a 2-mile walk. If you aren't able to walk, I invite you to still come to the opening ceremony, which is probably my favorite part of the day. So we do an opening ceremony where we recognize those who are living with the disease, those who are caring for someone with the disease, those who have lost someone, and also those who just advocate for a world without Alzheimer's. And then we have a speaker, but it's really important for people to see that they're not alone. And so that's the whole point of that day, is to bring everyone together and to show that we're all in this together and there are resources and people to help you. We also